In this second video on the Reflectance channel, I'm going to be building a reflective material from scratch. And hopefully in the process, I'll be explaining what the different parameters do, how they interact with one another, and how you can use them to create successful reflective materials. So I've provided a file for you to follow along if you want, and it's in the project files listed as Reflectance Video 2, Start. And I'm going to begin. I've got this sphere in the same setup as I had with the first video, so I've got a sky with an HDRI image lighting the environment and also providing reflections, but not showing up in the camera. And again, that's controlled using the compositing tag. I have a simple light on the scene, and I'm going to create a new material. So I can just double click here to begin this, and I'm going to call this Reflectance and pull that up here. So I'm not going to need the color channel at all for this material, and I'll explain why that is. Inside the Reflectance channel we have parameters for diffuse materials, for reflective shaders. All these things can be built right inside the Reflectance channel. So oftentimes you're going to find that the color channel is not necessary when building certain types of materials. So first of all, I'm just going to get rid of everything. I don't want any layers at all, so I can just click and press delete, or I could click and use the remove button within the layers tab. So I have nothing to start out with. So I'm going to add a layer here, and just to go kind of through some of these options. So I could start with a Lambertian or Orion diffuse layer, and I'll go back to that. I could start with an anisotropic reflection, so type surface, so your metallic type surfaces. We've already discussed a little bit about our reflective surfaces up here, with GGX kind of being the brightest star of this group. Beckman is also very good. And then you have your legacy values. So these are when you're bringing in a material that, or a scene that used a previous version of Cinema 4D, and you want to hold that, you want to retain that look. You can use the reflection legacy. And if you did that, I'll show you real quick. You could come down here under layer mask if you're going for that Fresnel look, and that would be the same type of reflection calculation that you would have had in previous versions of Cinema 4D. It's cheap, it's fast, it works very well in many cases, and so if you're looking for that look and that speed, you can still use those same methodologies that you had in previous versions of Cinema 4D. So I'm going to clear this and change this to, let's look at the Lambertian diffuse. So it just adds a color in here, and so this is acting basically as our base color for our material, and you can see how that looks. I can set some colors in here, so maybe I'll set this to maybe a blue color here, and now that is my base. And I'm just going to turn on interactive render region for a moment so we can kind of see how these materials are updating. So here again, no use of the color channel whatsoever, and just kind of using this as my base. So I'm going to come in here and type in base, layer. Now I'm going to change this in a little bit to actually make this a reflective surface. Didn't mean to click on the eye there. But for now, that will be good. And I'm going to add another layer. So if I just click add layer, GGX, and again, as I explained in the previous video, right now it just overtakes everything. Everything is reflective, and I get nothing of the base specular layer, diffuse layer that I just built. nor would I get anything from the color channel if it were activated. So you'll see no change in the preview within the interactive render region. So back in here, one of these settings, now we talked about attenuation. For this, I'm going to leave it as average for now. If I come into roughness and begin to turn that up, you'll now start to get some interaction with the specular and the built-in specular of the shader and the reflection. So I'm now starting to get a blurred reflection, and I'm going to turn down the specular so that I don't see it at all. And so this is kind of the look that it's giving me by default. Now I want to set a color for this, so I'm going to come in and maybe make this kind of a green color. And again, as this renders, it looks pretty good. Turn up that roughness just a bit. So as you can see, roughness is that kind of blurred reflection you can go for. Obvious reflection strength, bump strength. We don't actually have a bump in here, so playing with that wouldn't make a difference as of yet. In here we have options for layer mask. So right now everything, it's white, so everything is being displayed. If I wanted to back down the amount of reflection, if I wanted to pull back in the base layer, I could lower the layer mask value, so it's making everything become, right now if I had that at 50%, the entire layer would be at 50% opacity. So I'm seeing through and getting that base layer to show up. This could also be done in the layers, so you can see how these are linked. This is basically, well, it is. It's the same amount setting. So that is our layer mask value up here in the layers panel. I could also change the method. I could choose add, and you'll see that again changes the blend mode. I do not want to do that for this, so I'm going to set it back to normal. Alright, so I'm just going to rename this green reflection. And I want to limit this. I want this to be in a kind of a pattern. So I'm going to come down here, and let's say this kind of material is either like for an ornament, an Easter egg, some kind of design texture. So under the, I don't need layer for now yet, under the layer mask, I'm going to go to surfaces and choose tiles. And you can see how things are updating here, kind of strange for now. But I'm going to click on tiles. I'm going to change them to, let's see, waves 2, or do I want waves 1? Let's see. Waves 1 will be easier to edit. So you can start to see how this is going to play in. It'll play much stronger once I come in and turn up my wave colors all to white. So remember, we're creating a mask, so we want to deal with those grayscale values, and now I get this type of effect. So where it's black, we're getting no influence, and so you're really able to layer up some interesting materials this way. If I wanted fewer, I could turn up the global scale. I'm going to leave that as it is, though. I'm pretty happy with it. For now, I'm not going to change anything to do with the grout or the bevel width. So let's go back to our, back out of the shader. And so we can see what's happening here. If I wanted to, I could experiment with adjusting the attenuation. So right now it's average. I know I do not want additive, but I might want maximum mode, which is just going to push the color, should push the color a little bit more. It doesn't make too much of a difference in this case. And so what it reveals to me is that I'm really not too excited about my base layer. I want it to actually be reflective too. So as I said, I was probably going to change that. So I'm going to change that to Beckman. And now I'm going to get this nice reflection on the base surface as well on that blue. So if I wanted to come in and perhaps make the grout width a little bit bigger, kind of like that. Looks pretty good. And now we can see some of that base layer a little bit better. So now we're seeing a smooth reflection, and then in areas we're getting this rough, blurry reflection based on the layers I'm building up inside the Layers tab. So I'm just going to add another, and this time I'll use CGX. I'm going to rename it Red Dots, although probably more like red spots, but it's neither here nor there. So when I come down here, again, I'm going to want to use a different color. So I'm going to use red, since I just said that. And I want to again use a mask. So in this case, I'm going to create again, I'm going to go back to tiles, and this time I'm going to use spots, circles 3. All right. And I don't want to have any coloration within the spots, so I'm going to just set these all to white. And you can see how this is updating within the interactive render region. So I need to turn down the U scale a little bit as these are stretching across my surface. We'll go with that for now. Also want to limit the amount. Turn this up, make this a little bit more clear. And I want to raise this up quite a bit. So let's say to, say 300%. Let me turn this down a little bit on the bevel width. And so now I've got this new material on top. I want to create a little bit different kind of look here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure things in order. And I'm going to copy this channel, and I'm going to turn on a bump channel. And I'm going to paste this into the bump channel. And now we get this look here. And I'm going to increase the strength. And then within the Reflectance channel, I'm going to go in, and you'll see bump strength set to 100%. Don't want specular highlight coming off here. Do want to add a little roughness back in, so we can watch this update. There we go. And in the other materials, don't need them to really see the bump strength for these other layers. So I can kind of make some final adjustments to, and I'll have to do this to both. Maybe turn down the U scale to 55% and do the same for here. And there we go. And I want to experiment with the bump a little bit as well. So, kind of like the bevel higher. That high, maybe meet in the middle. About 30% again. This to 30%, so they're matching up. Actually, I liked it better the other way. So anyway, I'm able to fine-tune these, and I'm going to add one more layer to this group, and this will kind of take us through the last bit of settings that we can adjust here. So if I use the add, and I'm going to use GGX one more time, clear coat maybe, so I'll name this. And so in this case, I'm going to use the layer Fresnel. So this is a very high quality reflection option that mirrors what we've seen in previous versions of Cinema 4D with using the Fresnel to affect how reflections are across the surface. And this is a truer calculation. This is much more accurate, physically accurate. And so I'm going to use dielectric. And when I do that, I get all these presets. So depending on what type of material you're creating, you'll get different options. So if you're using a metallic material, you would use the conductor Fresnel, and then you could choose from these different options, presets here, and lots of really cool choices from this list. In this case, I'm going to create plexiglass glass type effect. So I'm going to use dielectric, and I'm going to change the preset. So you'll see all these different presets based on the different Fresnel types. So here I'm just going to use plexiglass as my preset, and that's just going to add this nice level of reflection all across, almost a bubble wrap, plastic look across the entire surface. And so in this case, I want to make just a couple of changes. I don't want a specular highlight. I don't need it to look at the bump. And I don't want any roughness, as this is, again, a clear coating. So as you can see, all these are building up. I only have 2 channels active, the bump and my reflectance. And so now I'm just going to do a full quality render of this. So let me set my settings a little bit higher and do a render of the viewport. And there you go. So hopefully this video has taken you through and shown you some of the different options and how you can build up your materials right inside the Reflectance channel. And this allows you to create some incredible textures, and again, it's just much more accurate, much more realistic, and as you can see, it renders in a pretty quick amount of time. Now you will suffer with the quality higher. You do suffer versus older versions of Cinema 4D where we were kind of using our cheats, or Fresnel's cheats, and so sometimes you'll have to decide the trade-off of whether or not the benefit is worth it for whatever the scene is you're rendering. But it's certainly going to be a higher quality using these newer techniques in the Reflectance channel. So hopefully you've seen how you can build up your materials using the Reflectance channel, looking at the layers panel, and then all the options that we have for each one of these layer types, our speculars, our reflectance layers. And hopefully you can use this to build your own realistic reflective materials.